Come in, have a seat. Welcome to another episode of Candid Conversations, the grief series. I know it's been a while since I've been here and I've talked and everything else like that, but the last few months have been a struggle for me. I have no idea why my emotions have been up and down and everything else like that, and this week it just seems like I reverted right back to where I was when James first passed. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, grief is not a linear path. It's definitely a roller coaster. However, I'm getting through it. I'm fighting it, choosing to be happy and everything else like that. Excuse the dogs in the background, because one thing that they're going to do, they're going to dog, and them are my babies and I love them. But, so, this video, I finally get to share my story. I will be talking about a toxic job that I left. I'll say this job damaged me beyond belief. So, to start from the beginning, so I worked for this job, and I've been at this job for a minute or three. And when it was all fine, the job was fine. I know it was not my ending job. It was not my career or anything else like that. And I knew it was a stepping stone. However, I didn't expect to get mistreated. I didn't expect to get emotionally abused or anything else like that. So we're going to dive into it a little bit. So my husband passed in January of 2020. We know this. So there's a lot of trauma attached to it. And I wasn't sleeping or anything else like that. So my manager at the time, it was February. It was like February, March-ish, and we were about to go into quarantine. We were going to work from home. And one thing about the year of 2020, I don't remember anything. The only thing that defines that year is death. That's just, I remember vague parts, but that's really it. So we had a meeting, and my administrator at the time was telling us that we were going to be working from home. I'm like, yes, finally a break. Everybody kept asking me what I needed, and I needed to be at home, and I needed more time. Well, in the particular position that I was in, they were like, y'all are still coming in. Y'all are considered essential. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to my manager talk. And she looks dead at me, and she's like, I'm going to need for you to tell your therapist to give you sleeping medicine. And I just sat there and looked at her in disbelief. Because literally nobody on my team knew I was in therapy but her and my administrator. I was mortified. Because at this point, I had been hiding in the bathroom to cry every day. I had to go out into the lobby to cry. Anywhere that I could hide, I would hide. The death bereavement policy at this job was 3 days, and then you're back at work. So my issue with this is that the friend that I had been talking to, who had been checking on me and everything else like that, they asked if she thought that I was ready to come back to work, and she said no. Well, I was back 3 days later anyhow. I had to plan his memorial at my job. I would hide in conference rooms to cry. People would just sit there and they would, ask me about my husband and everything else like that, and I could not function. So then February comes, and my manager at the time, she said that crap. So I was already angry. I was angry because of how my life is turning out and everything else like that. So instead of confronting it like I feel like I should have, I called my dad, and my dad actually stopped me a lot of the times from smacking the piss out of her, if we're being honest. Because that's just how angry she had me. So, some other instances at this job when I was dealing with death benefits and death certificates and everything else like that, I was trying to talk to this lady in HR that was over that stuff. And my manager literally followed me to that area. And every time I would try to talk in private to this lady about the death certificate and everything else that was going on, life insurance and stuff like that, she walked with me and sat there and tried to sit there for the whole conversation. I'm like, I don't want anybody around me. I really just want you to go away. Like, I just want you to go away. And she would always say, you know, I know you feel more comfortable talking to so-and-so, but I'm here if you need me. Well, my problem with that was, now I don't have a problem being friends with anybody at work, but here's the thing. I'm one of those people that you know who you can be friends with and you know who you can't be friends with. So she has made several statements talking about, well, I feel like we could be friends outside of work. And my feelings and my response was, you know, we're friends at work. That's good enough. That's good enough. I was never rude to her or anything else like that. And there was an instance where she just randomly touched my hair in the elevator, and my friend told her, she's like, you know, you don't ever touch a black woman's hair without asking for permission first. Like, you don't touch anybody without asking for permission. And as soon as that happened, you know, I felt violated because I was like, she really just touched me without my permission. And I had to, you know, let her know I don't like physical contact like that. I'm not a cuddler or anything else like that. So I don't like people touching me. I don't like hugs. I don't like none of that. That is just who I am at this present moment in my life. And I'm pretty sure I've been that way for a long time. So, you know, as the time goes on, she would kind of isolate me, really. And it would always end up as me and her. And we would have inappropriate conversations. She has looked at me and was like, man, I just love my husband. Don't you love yours? And I'm just sitting there like in full-fledged panic mode because I'm like, you know, he just died, right? And so that would cause the tears to come, and then I'd have to get up and I would have to go because I couldn't control the tears. And it just seemed like everywhere I turned around, she was there to remind me that my husband was dead. It never failed. It never failed. So when things would get more uncomfortable, I would go to my employee relations department. My employee relations department didn't do anything. They didn't do anything about the emotional abuse. They didn't do anything. And I remember one specific meeting, they tried to convince me that I was depressed. And like I explained to them, I'm not depressed. My therapist says I'm not depressed. I just want this lady to leave me alone. Like, I just want her to leave me be. Like, I get my husband is dead. You don't have to keep reminding me. And that's what it was. It was a reminder. She made it her life's mission to remind me every day that my husband was dead. And I'm like, there was a time where I was been to one of my friends and I'm like, man, my manager at the time, she reminds me all the time that my husband's dead. And it's like, you don't think that when I go home, the silence is deafening? Like, you don't think that I don't already know this going home to an empty house? Like, you don't think this? So finally, when the quarantine came, look, that was my best friend. The quarantine was my bestie because I was at home. I could focus on myself. I could heal. I could cry. I could have a fit. I could love on my dogs. My dogs could love on me when I was having hard days. Like, it was everything to me. And I remember one day we had a meeting and she's like, you know, we're going to have to come back to the building. I said, yeah, I know. And I'll prepare for that when that time comes. Well, you know you can't stay home for forever. I know. And I'll prepare for that when the time comes. And then she would always be like, well, tell me what you need. I need time. I need time to heal. I went from death to the pandemic. I was in overdrive and I was struggling and I was drowning. And then I had somebody that made it 10 times worse by verbally and emotionally abusing me. Like, y'all, if I could tell you how bad it got, I would. It was bad. And it just seemed like she picked fights with me for absolutely no reason. She was fixated on me, like obsessed with me. And I never understood it. And it was a fact of everybody would come up to me and, hey, Dejame, are you okay? How are you doing? How's everything going? Do you need anything? And I'm sitting there like, man, I didn't ask for the attention. I'm eternally grateful for it. But I never wanted this attention. I didn't want attention this way. And it just seemed like every time somebody came and checked on me, asked me how I was doing, pulled me off to the side, here she comes trying to make things worse. So at the beginning of 2020, me and my husband, we had planned to start trying for a family. So I lost a ton of weight. I mean, your girl was looking fine, looking good. And so one day she looked at me and she's like, well, you're losing a lot of weight. What's your secret? And I was like, intermittent fasting and drinking my water, really. So amongst other issues, the one that I got in trouble for, and I don't feel bad about it, we had to dress up for this training thing that they had us dressed up for. So I wore something a little bit snazzier, and she looks at me. She's like, yeah, you're not wearing your normal ratty clothes. You're wearing you're fancy. You're wearing something fancy. Y'all, at that point, I was so emotionally damaged by her and so angry because, nobody is helping me. I went to my employee relations department at least 4 or 5 times. Everybody who saw me at the time saw her follow me. She would follow me. She would talk to me. She would point me out and everything else like that. At that point, enough was enough. I felt like I went through all the proper channels and they just allowed her to emotionally abuse me. And they just allowed her to do these things to me. So I made a TikTok video about her. I don't feel bad and I didn't try to lie about it. And I went in on her because I'm like, you're trying to make me feel bad about hard work that I put into my body. You're trying to make me feel bad because of the clothes that I choose to wear on a daily basis. That is what I have. That's what I have. And so, amongst some other words, some 4-letter words, I went in on her. And so here's my thing. So when I first started in October of 2019, she looks me dead in my face and she says, I tried to look you up on social media, but all your social media is private. I said, yeah, I try to keep it that way because I don't like my personal life bleeding into my professional life. I think the two things are different. Well, I blocked her on everything, and I do mean everything. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Well, she decided she wanted to leave the department that we were with and she wanted to go somewhere else. Well, somehow she found my TikTok video and I was trying to figure out how. And she waited until the last day to report the video. So I ended up having a meeting with employee relations and they wrote me up. This is after they interviewed me for a position that somebody got the position that they weren't qualified for it. I was more than qualified, but the lady who got the position was not qualified for it for several reasons. And part of those reasons are that when she initially applied for the position, it came back that she was not qualified for it. So between my administrator and my boss and whoever pulled some strings, she got the job. I got written up after the interview. And I was angry. And so I went to employee relations again. And I asked them, I said, my question is, how did she find me? And they're like, well, we can't tell you how she found me. And like I told them, she's blocked on every social media platform I have. So how did she find me? And they could never answer the question. And I'm like, that bothers me because if you're blocked, you had to give somebody either my phone number, my name, or whatever the case may have been to find the video. Because if you try to spell Dejame, the name's not common. It's hard to spell. So how the fuck did you find me? And they can never answer the question. And I'm like, at this point, she has my address, she has my phone number, and everything else like that. That bothered me. And they could never tell me how she found me. And even after she left, she would ask, well, how's the team doing? How's Dejame? How's the team doing? And so before she left, we got into an altercation. Not even an altercation. It wasn't a physical altercation. We got into a rut. A few things about me, I don't tolerate disrespect well. And it's just not one of those things that I do. So, and I'm always going to try and be respectful. Even when I feel like I can't be respectful and shouldn't be respectful, I'm going to be respectful. So with that being said, we were doing this stupid, senseless project, and one of my daily tasks, I was over keys. And before we did what she asked us to do, I was like, hey, we might want to leave the keys because I feel like we're going to have to go back and set them back on the desk. And she's like, no, pick the keys up. I tried to say that in a meeting on a Friday, and her and my coworker, who ended up as my manager, they kept talking over me, and I was just trying to make a point. So I put my phone on mute. I put my video on mute because I'm like, I'm just trying to say something. Y'all are talking over me. Cool. I'm just going to keep my points to myself. Well, she felt some way about this meeting we had. And now, mind you, it was on a Friday. She carried those feelings over to Monday. And Monday is when it went down. So Monday I walk into work, haven't even had a chance to sit down, drink my coffee or anything else like that. And I'm on the phone with my sister. So I noticed she was upset because she does this passive aggressive thing and she doesn't talk to us when she's upset, doesn't even say good morning or anything else like that. Well, this particular morning she didn't say good morning. You can tell there was something wrong with her. Like, it was like the atmosphere shifted or whatever the case may be. And so while she was talking, now mind you, she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to my coworkers, and she wasn't even addressing me. As a matter of fact, me and my sister sent me a video, and I started laughing. Well, I had heard her talking, and I was my cubicle was right by one of my coworkers, and I just simply explained to my coworker what she was trying to say. And I was like, hey, we're going to go back and we're going to pick up the keys that we put down that I said that I was trying to say on Friday. So she's like, what'd you say? And I was like, nothing. She said, no, repeat it, because clearly you feel some type of way about it. I stepped around my cubicle, and I looked at her and I said, what I said was that we're going to do what I was talking about on Friday. We picked up all these keys, and now we're going to go lay them back down when I was like, we should have just set them there. So she looks at me and she's like, I'm not even the one that said to do it. And I looked at her and I was like, I never said you did. And I just walked off because I was like, I'm not going to tolerate how you're talking to me. So I walked off. One thing my therapist told me, when I get upset, I have to pause and reset because it can go from sugar to shit real quick. And so I walked off. I had to calm myself down. I called my dad. I talked to my friend in human resources. And I was like, yeah, I don't like that. And it just wasn't for me. So I decided from that point on that my manager won't address me unless there's a neutral third party. So she comes walking around the corner real fast. She's like, Dejme, can I talk to you? And I looked at her. I said, not without a neutral third party. She said, why do you feel like you have to have a third party? And I told her, I said, I am not talking to you without a neutral third party. Y'all, we get in this office and she's like, what's the problem? I looked at her. I said, besides the fact that you're trying to talk to me as if I were your 3-year-old child, I don't have a problem. I said, I was just simply stating that what we were doing was counterproductive and that I was trying to make that point on Friday, but everybody kept over talking me. And she's like, well, if you don't want our relationship to be how it was, then that's fine. We never had a relationship. We had a working relationship. It was never a personal relationship or anything else like that. And I just sat there and I was like, we don't have we don't have a personal relationship. We have a working relationship. And I was standing a few feet from her with my hands behind my back, just letting her talk. And then she accused me of being hostile. Now, mind you, I hadn't said a word. I was as quiet as a church mouse with my hands behind my back, giving her an opportunity to talk. My body language wasn't threatening or anything else like that. And she's like, well, you're being hostile. And I looked at her and I said, I literally have not said a word and I'm allowing you to talk. I was like, now, you might feel like I'm being hostile because I'm calling you out on how you're trying to talk to me. I do not like that. And she's like, well, do you want things to go back to how they were? No. I said, now, I'm not going to be disrespectful to you and I'm not going to be mean to you or anything else like that. But we don't have a personal relationship. So there's nothing, if it's not business, then we're not talking to each other. If it's not about work, we don't have anything to talk about. That's really it. And so from then on, she kept trying to treat me like trash. And every pot shot there was, she would try to take it. And one day we were doing an audit for keys. And I said, excuse me. Because I was trying to pull a drawer out that was above her. And I was like, I don't want to hit your head. She's like, well, you could just slam me in the head with that drawer. She's like, it's just a head. I don't need it. And I looked at her. I said, I need everybody to hear this. I do not want to do bodily harm to you. I do not want to make you bleed. Those are not my intentions. And that's not something that I'm interested in. And she's like, well, why'd you take it so seriously? Well, I just needed to be on the record that I don't want to do bodily harm to you. So after she left the job that we were at, my coworker turned manager, she was like, yeah, well, she's like, she pointed out last January, which was around the 1-year anniversary of my husband's death. She was like, yeah, Dejame always gets weird. Like, she's acting weird in January. And my coworker had to tell her, she's like, it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of her husband's death. Like, give her some grace. Well, she's just being weird and standoffish. And so here's the thing. Here's the issue. Because I had a meeting with my employee relations department. And they're like, why do you think she's treating you that way? Because I have absolutely no desire to be her friend outside of work. I don't have friends like that. I don't like passive aggressive people. I don't want a personal relationship with her. I'm cordial with her at work. But outside of work, we'll never sit at the same table. Never. And she feels rejected. And part of her was jealous because I got the attention that I got. And I never understood why she felt so threatened. But when I tell y'all that I was damaged from the 2 years that I worked at this job, and it got so bad that I had to go to the hospital. I was coming from dinner one day, and I was sitting in the car, and I noticed my feet started getting really warm. I started shaking, and I started getting clammy. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I was like, I need to go to the hospital. I can't breathe. And I went to the hospital, and they did all the necessary tests and, hooked me up to a heart monitor and all that other stuff. And they're like, well, you didn't have a heart attack. And I was like, okay. And then the doctor's like, they're like, we want you to go to your primary care physician. It might be, stress or something mentally. Went to my primary care physician, and she's like, yeah, you had a panic attack. And it bothered me. It bothered me because all the stress and emotional abuse and everything else from this job, I started having panic attacks. And I mean severe panic attacks, to the point where I would either have to go home or I would have to lay down because, once that panic attack is over, I'm going to go to sleep. I have absolutely no energy or anything else like that. And it got bad to the point where it scared me. It scared me. And so I started looking for other jobs, and this manager was like, I know you're not happy here, and I don't want to be the reason why you're not happy. But in truth, you are the reason. You are. But on the brighter side of things, not only did that manager go to a different company, thank God. So for the duration that I was employed with this entity, I didn't really have to deal with her. But I will say there were some good people that had my back. They were trying to give me their annual leave and sick days and things like that, so I can get more time to deal with the passing of my husband and everything else like that. But I ended up finding a new job, and I love the job I'm at. The people, I like my coworkers and everything else like that. Like, they're a fun group to be around, so shout out to them. But that's just a piece of what I had to deal with while working at my old job. And before anybody comes on here and disputes, and if you worked for said job and you have a different story, I promise you I have proof to back it up. And y'all, when I tell you that I never had a meeting with her that I did not write my own notes and times and things like that, like, I was serious. Every time she tried to have a meeting with me and it was just me and her, I made sure I wrote down the time, the meeting, everything that was said and everything else like that. So yes, I did take notes on every meeting we had. I did make an inventory of what was said. If it was personal or anything else like that, I definitely did. So I do have the proof. I have proof, and I have witnesses that seen the emotional abuse and the mistreatment and everything else like that. But I say all that to say that that was just a snippet of it. And this ends my grief series. This ends my portion of the grief series. And I'm so glad that I don't work in a toxic work environment anymore. And I'm glad that I can share that with you, share this journey with you. Now, my advice would be to always stand up for yourself. Don't let anybody mistreat you, whether it's at work or it's in your personal life. Always stand up for yourself. Now, don't go out and do what I did and make a social media video or anything else like that. I'm not saying that. And I do believe that, although I wasn't sorry for the video, I felt like I had no other choice. But I say all that to say, always stand up for yourself. Because corporate America and these jobs, they'll replace you quickly. But your mental and emotional health is 10 times more important than any job. And that's what I learned. That my mental health and emotional health are 10 times more important than any job. And I'm just so grateful that I'm finally at a job that values me, that I can have fun at, and that, I like all my coworkers, every single one of them. There's not a coworker I have now that I do not like, and I like every single one. So, coming up, we will be talking about grief some more, but I'll be getting some other opinions, like how it affected my siblings and how it affected my dad, excuse the dogs, and stuff like that. So stay tuned, make good choices, and have a good one. Bye!